If you're building your canopy or camper setup, one of the biggest decisions you have to make is what kind of fridge to buy. Walk into any shop or browse online and you're greeted with two clear choices: a chest fridge or an upright fridge. It is an age-old debate in the off-road and camping community. However, the answer might not be as clear-cut as they make it out to be online. You might assume it just comes down to how much space you have in your car and how high your canopy is. But there are actually massive differences in how these two styles perform when it comes to power, insulation, and keeping your food and drinks cold. What's up? I'm Eamon and welcome back to Bush Business. Today I'm going to walk you through my buyer's guide comparing the King's 45-litre chest fridge and the King's 85-litre upright fridges. While there is no shortage of videos online covering the basic differences between upright and chest fridges, in this video I want you to really understand the pros and cons of each. We're going to go well beyond the obvious differences and dive into a technical review showing the strengths and weaknesses of each style, so by the end of the video you can determine which style is exactly the best for your own setup. Before we get to business, like all of my previous videos, this is not sponsored. I paid full price for both fridges and I have no affiliation to any brands or shops mentioned. Therefore, if you do appreciate this kind of independent real-world testing, please hit that like and subscribe button for me. It really does go a long way to help the channel out. Let's get stuck straight into it. To really understand what these fridges are doing, I didn't want to just read the spec sheets or see which fridge makes it easier to grab a beer. I wanted to know exactly how they cool and operate beyond the obvious differences of opening doors and stacking food. That means doing a thorough back-to-back test accompanied by high-quality thermal imaging so we can really see what's happening behind the scenes. First, let's talk about the two fridges themselves. The 45-litre King's chest fridge has been in my Land Cruiser for almost 2 years and it hasn't missed a beat. It can operate as a fridge or a freezer depending on your temperature settings, and it can run off 240 volt AC power using the provided adapter. It is mounted on a King's fridge slide and has a single compartment. The 85-litre upright is the new Mark II model in my trailer. It has plenty of positive reviews and is a great fridge from my personal experience so far. It is a front opening design built for permanent installation. It can't be set as a freezer, but it does have a dedicated 6-litre freezer section that gets incredibly cold. At first glance, you would assume that the upright fridge has almost double the capacity of the chest fridge at 85 litres versus 45 litres. But don't be fooled by the specs and the numbers because there's a lot more to it than that, which I'm going to cover later on in the video. To test the fridges thoroughly, I carried out a number of real-world tests. The first test is the cooling test to see which fridge cools down fastest. Both fridges were turned off and left overnight to reach an ambient temperature which was 25 degrees Celsius. They were then set to 0 degrees Celsius on their maximum cool settings at the exact time and turned on. To keep the test completely fair, I used a thermometer with 2 wireless sensors, so there would be no need to open the doors of the fridges during the testing. Both the Land Cruiser and the trailer were parked outside in my driveway, so there would be no environmental variance. Same day, same time, same environment. And the ambient temperature during the test day was about 36 degrees Celsius. Because a fridge test isn't a real fridge test without beer, the second test looks at how efficiently they cool that beer down. I put a warm bottle of beer inside of each fridge at the start of the test to see which one cools down best at the end of the test. For the chest fridge, I put that beer right at the bottom, and for the upright fridge, I put it in the door card. The third test, which I think was the most important test, is to see which fridge has the best thermal insulation. I used a high-quality thermal camera to see the differences between the two. I wanted to see which one is better insulated, which one has better door seals, and which one cools evenly inside. The final test was to see which fridge stays coldest for longest when the power was switched off. This replicates our biggest fear at camp, a situation where your battery might run flat overnight while you're asleep, spoiling your food. Let's look at the results for test 1, the cooling speed, and worth noting again that it was a warm day at 36 degrees Celsius, so both the fridges had their work cut out for them. Starting off from ambient, the chest fridge cooled down faster. It dropped from 25 degrees Celsius to 9.5 degrees in the first hour, compared to 13 degrees for the upright fridge. By the second hour, the chest fridge was at 3.2 degrees compared to the upright at 6 degrees, And eventually, the chest fridge reached 1.7 degrees after 5 hours compared to 2.6 degrees for the upright. So the chest fridge cooled down faster and achieved a lower temperature overall. However, it is worth mentioning that this might just be because it is a smaller fridge with less volume to cool down inside, being 45 liters instead of 85 liters. Whilst cooling speed is important, it's not the full picture. When you fully load your fridge, you want to make sure that all of the food is being evenly cooled. You don't want areas where the food freezes and other areas where it stays too warm and spoils, which is why our next test comes in handy, the thermal imaging. Looking at the thermal camera, the chest fridge suffers from uneven cooling. The cooling elements are on the top sides of the fridge, mainly towards the top, but there is no cooling on the bottom at all. So when the fridge was set to 0 degrees, the sides had a minimum temperature of negative 1.1 degrees, but the base of the fridge sat between 5 and 8 degrees Celsius. The beer bottle that I placed in the bottom was sitting at an even 6 degrees. Therefore, that massive temperature difference from the freezing sides to the warm base means you have to be really careful where you pack your food and how you store it. The upright fridge performed very differently on the inside. It delivered very even cooling inside of the fridge at 2.6 degrees Celsius. But it didn't cool the beer down as well. The beer bottle that was put inside of the door card was at 9 degrees Celsius. And that kind of makes sense given that it was far away from the elements that are being cooled and it was purely cooled by the circulating cold air inside of the fridge. So if you do go with an upright fridge, the drinks inside of the door might not be as cold as you want. The upright does, however, have a very tidy little trick. A dedicated freezer compartment that gets incredibly cold. The freezer measured a crazy negative 30 degrees Celsius at its coolest and minus 12 degrees at its warmest, which is incredibly cold. So for your drinks, you can just throw that into the freezer for a few minutes, let it get ice cold without freezing the rest of your food, and then having an ice cold beer. Next, I wanted to check the structure and the design to see if there is an obvious difference in the insulation of each fridge. Using the thermal camera, I scanned the outside of both fridges while they were running at their lowest temperature after 5 hours. And looking through the thermal camera, the upright fridge appears to be better insulated. For the chest fridge, the thermal camera showed an exterior door seal temperature of 25 degrees Celsius, a top lid temperature of 25 degrees Celsius, and the sides at 27 degrees. The compressor was the hottest part externally at 34 degrees as you expect. But in comparison, when I scanned the upright fridge, the front door was 29.5 degrees, the sides of the fridge were 34, and the seals were 28 degrees. These higher temperatures means that the fridge is retaining the cooler temperatures inside of it as opposed to bleeding them out. Just like the chest fridge, the warmest part of the upright fridge is the compressor at 33 degrees Celsius. To validate this result, I decided to switch both of the fridges off, and after 2 hours, see which one holds the best temperature, with the temperature outside being 36 degrees Celsius. And the results confirmed my assumption. After 2 hours without any power, the upright was cooler at 13.3 degrees, as opposed to the chest fridge warming up to 18.3 degrees. All of this insulation data directly impacts the next critical factor, which is power consumption. This dictates what size battery and solar setup you need. The 85-liter upright draws 2.5 to 3 amps when set at 5 degrees. The chest fridge generally draws around 2.5 to 4.2 amps while the compressor is running. So on paper, the upright has the more efficient compressor. It is also the newer fridge. However, upright fridges also lose more cold air when they are opened and cycle more frequently than chest fridges, leading to slightly higher overall power consumption. With the technical stuff out of the way, let's now talk about how these fridges are actually like to live with. In my setup, both fridges are fairly up high and require some reach. But if I install both of them in my canopy of the Land Cruiser, the upright is certainly easier to look into without needing a drop-down slide. So that's a big tick for the upright fridge for ease of use. The chest fridge, despite its smaller 45-liter volume, can fit considerably more food and drink than the upright. But the drawback is that you can't access it as easily without taking everything back out, especially if what you want is at the bottom of the fridge. So you kind of end up digging around in the cold trying to find that can of Coke. And then when you do take it out, you need to rearrange everything back in and make sure that anything that's fragile goes up the top so it doesn't get crushed in the process. On the other hand, the upright, despite being almost twice the volume, cannot take nowhere near as much food and drink as the chest fridge, as there's plenty of wasted space in between the shelves and you can't really stack it that tight. But the massive upside is that all of that food and drink can be accessed easily without having to empty the top-loaded items to access what's on the bottom. The King's chest fridge also has a major advantage. It can operate as a fridge or as a freezer depending on your temperature settings. It can also run on 12 volt or 240 volt power at home, and it's easy to unstrap and take it out of the slide. In comparison, the upright is pre-wired for 12 volt only and can't run on AC, but it does have that super icy cold built-in freezer. So which fridge is right for you? If you want rapid cooling, maximum usable space, and slightly better off power consumption, go with the chest fridge. It is a great value option, so you can use it at home on AC power if you need an additional fridge or freezer, or you can easily move it between your car, your camper, your house, your mate's car with minimal effort. You can also run it as a dedicated freezer or set it to freezing cold temperatures on hot days where you know you're going to be opening and closing that lid to keep your food super cold. But if you want even cooling for your food with an exceptionally cold integrated freezer, and if you want the convenience of just opening the door, grabbing what you want without digging around with ease, and without having to reach out too high, then the upright fridge is the winner for you. Using the upright fridge also means that your food's not going to be squashed by being loaded on top of each other, making it perfect for delicate items, although you do have to make sure that it's packed tightly and securely to avoid it bouncing around on tough terrain. If the power does switch off, the upright fridge is going to hold its temperature better, especially with some frozen food that is solid inside of the freezer. In my specific situation, I'm happy using the chest fridge as a dedicated freezer and the upright fridge for anything that can't be frozen. And I can confirm that that setup works incredibly well, especially since my trailer and Land Cruiser have dedicated 200 amp hour battery systems and dedicated solar. It kind of works as a redundancy backup in case one of them turns off. However, having now tested and owned both fridges, if I was to choose just one of these fridges to travel with solo, I would probably choose the upright fridge. It gives even cooling and acts as both a fridge and a freezer at the same time, so I don't have to choose between one of the two, even though it comes at the expense of less usable space and slightly higher power draw. Let me know in the comments, which fridge do you think will work best for you, or what fridge do you currently run in your setup and what do you think of it? I also hope that this testing helps you sort out your own 12 volt system and makes it easier for you to choose between these two fantastic fridges that I cannot rate any higher. Once again, if you have found value in this video, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe button for me, and be sure to check out some of my other videos for some more reviews and tutorials. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.